Imagine walking through a city just after midnight about 8,000 years ago. No voices, no markets, no torchlight beyond a faint glow in the distance. Behind thick walls sits the city's greatest treasure, not gold, not silver, but grain. Thousands of baskets and sacks filled with harvested crops. Enough food to carry an entire community through the coming seasons. It looks safe. It isn't. Somewhere in the darkness, tiny movements ripple between the stores of grain. Hungry rodents have found their way inside. They don't need an army. They don't need permission. They only need one opening. But another hunter is already waiting. Silent, patient, almost invisible. It leaves no monument, commands no soldiers, and signs no treaty. Yet each night, it quietly protects the resource that allows the city to exist in the first place. History usually celebrates kings, engineers, and warriors. It almost never remembers the predator moving through the shadows. So here's the question. What if the greatest guardian of civilization was never a soldier, but a silent predator? Most people ask the wrong question. Why do humans love cats? Interesting question, but not the important one. A better question is this. How could a single predator help stabilize an entire food network? Researchers studying ecosystems often describe something called an ecological cascade. Change one species, and the effects spread outward through countless others. Remove a predator, and prey populations expand. Expand the prey, and food stores disappear. Lose the food, and suddenly the survival of an entire settlement becomes uncertain. Not because humans became weaker, because the balance became weaker. A city is only as secure as its harvest. A harvest is only as secure as the ecosystem surrounding it. That's the part history rarely tells. Civilizations are built on food. Food survives because ecosystems survive. To understand this story, you have to forget cats for a moment. The first character wasn't a predator. It was a plant. Researchers estimate that around 10,000 years ago, communities in the Fertile Crescent began collecting and cultivating wild cereals instead of relying entirely on hunting and gathering. A few scattered seeds became tended fields. Seasonal camps became permanent villages. That single change rewrote the relationship between humans and food. For the first time, people weren't simply finding calories. They were storing them. Harvest after harvest, grain was gathered into shared spaces designed to keep it dry, protected, and available through every season. Food no longer appeared and disappeared with migration. It stayed. Imagine how unusual that was. For millions of years, nature rarely left concentrated food sitting in one place for months at a time. Humans had created something evolution had almost never seen before, a dependable source of nutrition that existed all year. It was an extraordinary achievement. It was also an invitation. Because every new habitat creates new opportunities, and every opportunity attracts something ready to exploit it. Agriculture didn't just feed humans. It created an entirely new ecosystem. The story begins with grain. To the people who harvested it, grain meant survival. It meant winter meals, growing families, and settlements that no longer needed to move with the seasons. Every basket represented weeks of work and months of security. But humans weren't the only creatures capable of recognizing value. To a rodent, a granary wasn't a building. It was paradise. Stored grain offered warmth, shelter, and a dependable food supply. Instead of searching across open landscapes each day, rodents could find everything they needed within the walls of a single settlement. Food, cover, opportunity. And rodents reproduce quickly. Under favorable conditions, populations can expand in surprisingly short periods, turning a handful of visitors into a persistent problem. Wait, the grain wasn't valuable simply because humans ate it. Grain became valuable because almost every hungry creature wanted it. Every treasure creates a thief. The larger the harvest became, the larger the challenge became. Rodents did more than consume food. They chewed through containers. They contaminated stored supplies with waste. They damaged seeds intended for future planting. Some also carried parasites that thrived wherever rodents gathered. Ironically, the success of permanent villages made them increasingly attractive to these unwelcome neighbors. Think about it. A settlement had walls to keep danger out, yet those same walls protected the pests once they were inside. The safer humans made their food, the safer they made it for rodents as well. Building a city also meant building paradise for pests. People tried to defend their harvests. They raised storage platforms, improved construction techniques, guarded valuable supplies, and developed clever ways to reduce losses. But there was a limit to what constant human effort could accomplish. Nature had already solved this problem, just not in the way anyone expected. If you're enjoying exploring these hidden stories behind human civilization, consider subscribing. There are more surprising connections ahead that change how we see our own history. Beyond the edge of the settlement lived a quiet hunter. Wildcats had spent generations hunting small mammals across grasslands and rocky landscapes. They didn't understand farming. They didn't understand villages. They understood prey. As rodent populations expanded around human settlements, those settlements became attractive hunting grounds. The cats followed the mice, not the people. No invitation, no training, no command, just opportunity. Over time, humans benefited from the presence of these hunters, while the hunters benefited from the steady supply of prey. Neither species needed to change its purpose. Their interests simply aligned. Fossil evidence and archaeological discoveries suggest that this relationship deepened gradually. One famous burial on the island of Cyprus, dating back thousands of years, places a human and a cat together, hinting that the connection had become more than a chance encounter. Later, as trade networks expanded across seas, cats traveled aboard ships where their hunting skills protected stored food during long voyages. Without speeches, without contracts, without anyone planning it, the partnership spread from settlement to settlement. People often say humans domesticated cats. The truth is more interesting. Humans built an environment that rewarded wildcats for staying close. The cats changed. The humans changed. Civilization changed. The strongest partnerships are sometimes never planned. Of course, the story isn't quite that simple. Cats were never the only answer. Across different civilizations, people built elevated granaries to make them harder to reach. They carved wooden traps. They relied on dogs to guard valuable stores. They posted watchmen through the night, protecting harvests that represented an entire year's survival. Those methods worked, until someone stopped maintaining them. A trap has to be reset. A guard has to stay awake. A wall has to be repaired. Every solution demanded continuous effort. A wild predator asked for something different. Not constant instruction. Opportunity. As long as rodents gathered around stored grain, the hunter had every reason to return, night after night, generation after generation. That is the quiet power of an ecological partnership. Technology can reduce work. Ecology can remove the need for it. So was civilization built because humans love cats? Not quite. Was it because cats became perfectly domesticated? Not that either. Was it simply the story of one clever species controlling another? Again, no. The deeper story is that agriculture transformed every species caught within its orbit. Wild grain changed first. Stored harvests changed the landscape. Rodents changed their behavior by exploiting a dependable food supply. Wildcats followed that expanding source of prey. Humans, in turn, adapted to the presence of a predator that quietly protected one of their most valuable resources. No species stood outside the system. Every species responded to it. Fossil records suggest that this relationship unfolded gradually across thousands of years, shaped less by deliberate planning than by repeated opportunities. Each generation inherited an environment slightly different from the one before it, and each species adjusted in its own way. Nobody designed the partnership. Nobody signed an agreement. Nobody declared a winner. Instead, grain, rodents, wildcats, and humans became participants in the same ecological story. Civilization wasn't built by one species. It emerged from an accidental alliance. Now the story turns toward you. It's easy to imagine that history is shaped only by human decisions, by inventions, governments, and great leaders. Those things matter, but they have never been the whole story. Even today, your life depends on partnerships you rarely notice. Trillions of microbes in your gut help digest the food that keeps you alive. Pollinating insects support crops that feed billions of people. Fungi beneath the soil exchange nutrients with plants through vast underground networks. Predators throughout the natural world help keep ecosystems from drifting out of balance. You don't wake up thinking about them, yet they are working for you every day. The same pattern reaches back to the first farming villages. Human civilization did not grow in isolation. It grew within a web of relationships, each species responding to the opportunities created by another. Perhaps that's what makes our species unusual. Not that we stand above nature, that we become part of it in ways capable of reshaping the world. You survive because countless invisible partnerships survive with you. Think back to that ancient granary. Night has fallen once again. The harvest is still there. The settlement is still sleeping. And somewhere between the stores of grain, a quiet hunter continues its familiar path. No one in that city knows its name. No one writes about its nightly work. No monument is raised in its honor. Yet another harvest survives. Another season begins. Another generation carries on. History often remembers the builders. It rarely remembers the relationships that allowed anything to be built. Researchers estimate that millions of species have lived on Earth across deep time. Humans are only one of them. Yet our greatest achievements have often come not from acting alone, but from creating environments where entirely different species, each following its own instincts, become part of the same story. If you enjoyed exploring the hidden ecological partnerships behind civilization, I'd love to have you join me for the next journey. Because the greatest discoveries are sometimes hiding in the ordinary. The greatest empires were never built alone.